Brighton podcast. Today I bring you a guest. I bring you Joseph. Joseph is from Voice One Africa, and in this episode we discuss what Voice One Africa is about and the work they're trying to do that side and their vision and their goal. We discuss the problems that Africa is facing. We discuss the possible solutions that we need to make progress in Africa. And I hope you enjoy the podcast. I hope you enjoy the episode. So without further ado, I bring you Joseph. Okay, Joe.
Brighton.
How are you?
Great.
It's good to have you today on the podcast.
Indeed.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
If you could, for the benefit of the audience, if you give us a little bit of an introduction of who you are and what are you doing in life
So I'm a student at UCT, postgraduate student. I'm studying urban studies. We're thinking about cities and how to make African cities more inclusive and more robust, So that's actually my second postgrad. So my first was in social psychology. So I'm a psychologist, a practicing social psychologist. And so I'm Ghanaian. And in Ghana, I work in the public sector. I'm into urban planning. That's what I do. So in the public sector, I work with the Urban Planning Authority. And so my interests actually spans youth empowerment and also about cities, because cities cities impact every area of our lives as human beings, because we live in these spaces. So if the spaces are open enough, if the spaces are inclusive enough, whatever happens within the space impacts on our livelihoods. And so I guess that's where my interest has been around there. Yeah. But then I think my background, growing up in not so rich background, So I guess that sort of positioned me, because now I find myself in a place where I'll not say advantaged, but I have a lot of opportunities and more exposed and advantages that many people do not have, at least back home in Ghana and stuff like that. So it's I have a responsibility. I feel that I have a responsibility I have this kind of responsibility to give back, basically, to impact and to make the kind of exposure and the opportunity and all that I have transcended to others who may not have this kind of opportunity that I have.
I think that is amazing work. I really resonate with that to a lot of extent, and I share the same vision. I grew up in the rural parts of Zimbabwe as well, and being where I am today, I realized that I'm in a position where I can actually gather around some resources. Just, it doesn't have to be financial, because I'm nowhere close to having financial power to do that kind of impact, but to just, I think, open up space for opportunities for people who really need them, because there are a lot of people. You and I would probably not be here if it wasn't for the opportunities that we saw, however different they were, but it was those opportunities that allowed us. I like people who say, the quote that says, you need to open up space where opportunities meet talent, and there's a lot of talent out there that's awaiting opportunities.
And opportunities, that's true.
Who knows, maybe the guy who's going to find the cure to all the cancer diseases is chilling in some rural community there, and they don't have the opportunities, and if that talent is not exploited, then that's a talent going to waste, really.
That's true.
So can you tell us a little bit about what you are currently doing and the organization that you're starting up?
So the Voice One Africa Youth continent-wide youth initiative. I must add, because it's a continent-wide initiative. Yeah. So the initiative sort of started last year, 2019, and basically it was about I was part of the Young African Leaders Initiative, West African chapter called 15. And so when that program was done, it's a US aid funded, the Obama started that then. And so when the training ended, I had already founded an NGO, the Quarcoo Initiative. That was in 2018. So we were into economic empowerment for marginalized groups in West Africa, but then we started in Accra. No, we started in Ghana, but in a rural community where we're trying to create alternative livelihoods for cocoa farmers. And so it was a community-wide project. And so as that was ongoing, that got me into the yearly training. And during the yearly training after that, I started thinking more continent-wide, because the exposures and the people who came to speak and all that. So I was thinking, and you could see how similar we were. From different Cameroon, Liberia, name it. All the West African countries, and we're so similar. Like there was no difference. I guess the only thing was just because maybe we're from different countries, but maybe cultural and language differences. But aside that, nobody knows that this person's from we're just like together. So I think from there we started thinking about how we could sort of create that kind of collaboration where it's that kind of country difference, that kind of conceptualizing oneself as from a particular unit. Say I'm a Ghanaian, and so you just think Ghanaian, and you're not thinking more of the collective, but in the particular. I think that's a limit. And so we started, myself and some colleagues started thinking about how we could help the youth of Africa now start thinking more in the collective, more in the African sense, the wider sense, as opposed to the country specific or culture or family or tribe or ethnicity. So break that kind of limits and open up the conversation to a broader perspective, and even the worldview and the view. The view of Africans. So that kind of started it, but we could not really pull it off. And then my initiative, that's the Quarcoo Initiative, we started, we have over 200, in fact, almost over 400 volunteers for the Quarcoo Initiative from different parts of Africa. We even have volunteers from America, but largely we're engaging on social media, so on our WhatsApp platform and stuff like that. And this project came up where people just started sharing the African dreams. So it's like people just wanted to share the kind of Africa they want. And we felt that, okay, so this is something that can get the youth thinking, because I'm a psychologist, like I mentioned, and we realized that one of the ways of becoming awakened is introspection, where you start, when you look deep within yourself. It's a difficult exercise to introspect, like looking deep within yourself to figure out who you are and what you really want in life. And lots of people have not done it because it's not an easy thing to do. So even asking the question, what kind of Africa do you want, got people really thinking. And we realized that this is a way that could make people awaken, because to a large extent, the youth of Africa are quite detached from what's happening. Everybody's thinking about themselves, career and how to make a living and all that. So this whole thing about this agenda, AU Agenda 2063, which is a big policy, and they are wanting that this president wants this to happen. But if the youth that are supposed to make this happen, and the youth is the largest demographic, if we are not engaged, then this whole thing will be like any of those other policies that came, AU Vision 2020, and those things never really brought any change, significant change, because they were not attached to the youth. The youth didn't connect to it. Right, so we felt that if we are able to make this Africa We Want initiative, or this Africa we Want thing, a youth like a youth action, something that the youth sort of identify with, then it can catch fire and people will just gravitate towards thinking about it, talking about it, and pushing people, and particularly our leaders, to give us what we want. And also the youth also applying themselves to create the change that we want. So that was what brought about the Voice One Africa initiative that we are even yet to launch, because as of now, I think there are about 13 or so countries connected, and we are having discussions how to start it within all these countries across Africa. But for now, so it started with the Nkoso initiative, where people were just sharing their African dreams, and as they were doing that, people were just thinking about it, and it brought an awakening, and that sort of led to this standalone organization that we are wanting to set up. Yeah, so the Voice One Africa continent-wide initiative is something that is now going to catch fire. And so far, like I'm saying, we have about 13 countries connected. And just 2 days ago, that was Thursday, 2 days ago, the steering committee was inaugurated. We had a commissioner for oath. We had a commissioner for oath from Ghana who did the swearing in of the steering committee. And the steering committee has, I think, about persons, I think, quite represented. So different countries. So the work of the steering committee basically is to formulate the policies and the legal structure and the legal framework that would sort of help with the establishment of the national chapters of Voice One Africa. Yeah, and when we come out with those policies, then we'll be able to now go into establishing, in terms of registering the national chapters in all these countries.
Yeah.
And then the project and the initiative just kicks off.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So about Voice One Africa, you have given us maybe summary of like the vision that you have. What is the approach that you want to have? Do you want to, because I get the sense that you want to open up the space, as much space as possible for conversation, for, to have the youth engaged in this initiative.
Yeah.
I think it's really important what you mentioned, that if we just have the visions, like we just create the 2063 agenda, all these different kinds of agendas that we create without the youth engaged in them, then it's not going to have much traction. We're going to get to 2063, create another agenda, right? Nobody's going to
That's true.
So I think it's important that once we have an agenda, because the people who are probably creating the agenda won't be able to be, taking part in the agenda in 2063. They will probably 60 be retired,
years,
right?
70 years.
Yeah.
I mean, they are this old, our presidents and our leaders are really very old. Like, it's sad, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
And they are making these decisions for the youth.
Yeah, so I think it's very apparent that it's very important to have the youth involved in that. So, I think my follow-up question on that is, what is the approach for Voice One Africa? I think it's partly conversation, and what can you speak more on the action side? Like, what is the action? Let's say you've got a national chapter opened up in Zimbabwe, right? And you've got someone who is willing to engage in the conversation. What is the action part? Okay,
so thanks for that question. So the vision is to see knowledgeable and confident African youth committed to building a strong, united and progressive Africa, right? And our mission is to open up conversations, like you're saying. And we are asking, how can we encourage and navigate African youth towards making their voices heard? And can we explore further the potential of art and culture as an expression of the agency of youth? And to what extent can we leverage the forceps of entertainment industry for employment, unity, peace, and empowerment, and the development of the continent? So our mission is to uncover avenues to adequately address these imperatives as a contribution to the Pan-African agenda. So how we are doing this is to use, like we said, we're using art, media, culture. These are the mediums. These are the dominant mediums for our operations. And to summarize this, so we're using art, media, and culture. And you better understand it if I just give you a structure of how the whole thing is going to be. So we're going to have what we call the community of knowledge practice, right? The community of knowledge practice. The reason is just to hint out on the key principles. Sorry. Yes. So the reason is we've noted, like as I gave initially, we've noted that there's this disjoint between countries, right, and also within Africa, right. So we're going to have a continent-wide coverage in terms of all that we do. Then the second is to bridge the research, policy, and practice gap. What we realize is that there's lots of, in terms of policy, there's a disjuncture between what's happening in research, what's being found out in research and studies, and what's feeding into policy that's actually guiding what's happening in space and in our government and in youth management. And then what is also in practice, what the practitioners, the civil society, and also civil society, public service, and then private sector. So there's a disjuncture between these three sectors, but it shouldn't be. These three sectors should work together. So the community of knowledge practice basically is saying that we're going to work with researchers or intellectuals, like people who are basically studying into the kind of things that we are doing. So if it's art, people who are studying into art. If it's, all the facets that are relevant to youth, right? So there's research, and then there is practitioners, people who have extensive practice in these areas. So in music, in art, in media, in culture, travel, tourism, like all these things are events. So these people who are practitioners in this area. Then we also look at the policymakers, those who are in parliament, in the public sector, that are making the laws and pushing how things happen in space and stuff like that. Yeah. And so the community of knowledge practice is like the top hierarchy, the top action where so we have three communities of knowledge practice: the public sector community of knowledge practice, the private sector community of knowledge practice, and the civil society community of knowledge practice. And then we have the president. So then these three community of knowledge practice sort of guide and shape what's happening in all and this continent-wide level, right? So this organization, though it's now beginning, it's not a new organization, because we are riding on the experience and expertise of several years.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's it. So at that level, when, like you're saying, we establish the national chapter in ZIM, then what happens is that the national chapter is established, and then we go on to the community level. So Voice One Africa is a grassroots organization, right? So we have the community groups, or community clubs and school clubs. So in the universities, in the high schools and the basic schools, from, the youth is defined from 14 years to, as far as United Nations defines it from 14 to 20, and then they extend to 15 to 25. But with the African Youth Charter, it's from 15 to 35. So then we are defining, the Voice One Africa is defining youth as from 14 to 35 years. And so our reach is reaching people in the universities and also in the high schools and then basic schools. That's from maybe, I think, level where we have the 14 years going. Yeah. So we create clubs in all these schools and also in the communities. So for example, this organization is going to work largely with volunteerism, because that's one way we are also going to empower the youth, because this is going to create opportunity for capacity building, right? So when we establish the chapter in ZIM, we start with the activities. Maybe it's a music concert or a film show in a community, or a poetry, something that gets the youth out of their spaces into a group. And when we meet and we come out with, or we do perform, that those performances happen.
Yeah.
Then the conversation we are having, it will be had there. It will begin the conversation, and people will join. Then we start these youth groups, and then the conversation keeps going. And people, for the next 2 years, that's from 2022, all that we are doing is generating the African dreams of people.
And building up the momentum.
Yeah, so we are just saying that what's your African dream? What kind of Africa do you want? And so, yeah, do you want to answer that?
What kind of Africa do I want?
Yes, what kind of Africa do you want?
Yeah, I think probably, I have a big suspicion that most people share pretty much the same vision or the same goal. Maybe the methodology and the tools and the pathways we want to take from moving from point A being where we are today, to some futuristic utopian world, it's pretty much the same, because I want to live in a world where we really minimize or pretty much eradicate the suffering that there is. There's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of disease, there's a lot of inequality, lack of access, and I want to move to a world now where we sort of rid ourselves or get those things away from society. So where we maximize, everyone is as happy as we can possibly do that. I mean, that's ideally what you would want to see. But I mean, in the short term goal, short term, I want to see a lot more opportunities being given to people, access to education, access to good health, to food and shelter, and at least give everyone a fair chance of fighting this journey. Because I think, there's a lot of fighting involved in just survival itself.
That's it.
So I think, the fact that you're born in some rural community and someone is born in, is born to Bill Gates, nobody chooses that, right? You just happen to be born, but you don't choose the country, the place, or the parents, or the community, or even the year that you're born, right? So I don't think that should be a disadvantage to anyone. We should, in fact, I think we should realize that if I can't hold you accountable for, say, atrocities or bad things that were done by your father, then why should we hold you? Why should you be a misfortune to the circumstances that you're born into? So yeah, I really believe that, even at a moral level, I really believe that we all have a moral obligation to try and, offer space and opportunities to everyone. Yeah,
that's really deep. I mean, it's deep. Yeah. That's a solid African dream there, and a lot of people are sharing. So in this picture we just created, so the national chapter is set up. They are having community engagement at different communities, institutions, and stuff like that. And people are sharing their African dreams. And we are recording all of these. We are recording videos. We are recording audios. Yeah. And then at the end of, say, the year, we're going to have it's a 2-year project, right? Yeah. Whilst we are just collecting dreams across the continent. We're going to do a content analysis of all these dreams that we've had. And we are going to bloat it out, where we come up with the major themes that have come up and all that. And then it becomes a storytelling. So we're using storytelling as a medium or a channel, a vehicle of projecting the voices of the youth, right? So we pick particular incidents or particular stories, and then we highlight them and with pictures and videos. So there are documentaries that are going to come out of this project in the next 2 years. There's going to be a publication, or let me say a couple of publications coming out from this project. Stories about youth in different countries, in different places, locations, telling their African dreams. And there are also going to be events and arts that's coming out of it. Others may just want to paint out their African dream, And so that's it. So from Zim, we're going to have all these. We're going to have these documentaries coming out of there. And we're going to have the youth telling their stories. And then this is going to be bloated. So imagine this happening all across Africa. Yeah. And it's channeled through this big Voice One Africa. And we're going to have symposiums where we bring out people from all these countries into one location. So if maybe for this year, the event is going to happen, say, in Nigeria, then it means that we're all going to cluster or meet in Nigeria, and and we're seeking partnerships.
Representatives from across the country.
Yeah, with all the countries, and we come as much as possible. We'll not just make it more of a representation. Anybody who wants to come, and because there's a youth initiative, and we are leveraging on youth contact, and that's one thing that we are really pushing to make it, to expose youth to other youth in different countries, to be exposed to different cultures. Because the more we are exposed to different cultures, the more we become less ethnocentric, right? So we are more open to other cultures. We are more open to, and then all these tribal wars and will now start coming down, right? So that's it. And when I'm coming to Zim, I don't need to worry because you may be able to host me for just 2 or 3, maybe 2-3 days.
You're welcome anytime.
And if you're coming to Ghana, same. Yeah. And so that's how we are trying to do it. So with youth across all these countries, we're going to do the same. So we don't need to worry about hotel bills and food and stuff like that. And also because we are partnering with a lot of people, there's going to be enough to cater for all of these. And
actually, that was going to be my next question on Voice One Africa, because it's clear that you are looking to have as many youth involved in this project.
Yeah.
And that's the people part, right? Like we want as many people as possible involved. But what is it? What are the other things that you're looking for in this starting phase? Probably maybe in terms of resources. What are the current steps that you're taking in terms of seeking that, and what more is it that you're seeking to make this dream realizable?
The dream, it's realizable, and we've already started. So, like with nothing, I mean, so far, what cost? Maybe data costs and data costs probably, and the cost of moving out of comfort zones and challenging oneself to talk to people you otherwise consider strangers. And like the way you just reached out to me and the way I had to move out of my comfort zone and share materials in spaces where you don't really know how people respond to it. So I think these are the costs at the onset. And so members of the group so far just need to step out of our comfort zones and push ourselves. Put ourselves at the edge, and if people accept us or not, we just have to push ourselves there and see. And so far it's been good. The response has been good. We have people volunteering already. There are people volunteering, and we have people on the steering committee from different countries. Nobody's being paid. People are just committing their time, and we are using our own data to do the meetings that we are doing. What we need are partnerships, and we've setting out. We've sent out conversations. So even the WhatsApp messages and the videos that we sent out recently are inviting partners. We are asking people to partner this initiative. And so even here in Cape Town, next week I actually have a meeting with an NGO in Cape Town, and a well-established NGO that have seen our video and they are wanting to talk to us about it.
Awesome.
So basically that's it. So to establish with existing organizations and institutions, and so in terms of resources, we may need some funding, but we don't really need funding for the phase in which we are now. The phase in which we are now is just to talk to people about their African dreams. What kind of dream do you want? What kind of Africa do you want? Share it. And as you share it, we record it, and it's on social media. We are creating traction about the voices of the youth. And as this just keeps going out, then people are becoming more awakened by just reflecting about the kind of Africa they want. And you become awakened, you become conscious, and now you think more about Africa, you think more about your dreams, and then you'll be able to apply yourself to making that dream realizable.
I was about to ask you the kind of partnerships that you're looking for, but I think you've already answered that.
But we need people in media, so like yourself, particularly at this point. So media and photography, I think at this point in particular, these are the kind of partnerships that will really help.
To amplify the voices.
Yeah.
So, okay, I think I really like this is amazing work, and I wish the best of luck to the next couple months that are coming up. But there's a lot of, I think currently, not a lot of, but I'm speculating that there's some youth who have lost some optimism, I think, about the African vision, and
there's hopelessness. There is.
Yeah, there is, and some people trying to move away from their places to elsewhere, saying let's look for greener pastures. It's futile to remain here, etc. And you find this almost across the continent, and people, we're dealing with a lot of challenges that we have currently, and it can lead to people losing optimism and hope, and I think a lack of optimism and hope is kind of futile because it leads to inaction, right? You don't want to do anything.
Also crime. In fact, research by, I'm studying with the African Center for Cities at the University of Cape Town, and they've had several studies into city spaces and cityscapes. And one of those studies sort of hinged on hopelessness and criminology and
there's some correlation there,
and gangsterism. So there's a correlation between this sense of hopelessness and then crime and gangsterism. And so
so I think I wanted to ask, what do you say, or what do we say to inspire optimism, I guess, to sort of reignite it in the youth?
What I would say is that there is hope. When people say there is no hope, it's only because that to a large extent we have limited ourselves. And that's it. It's our worldview, So people have sort of limited their worldviews. And to a large, I wouldn't say it's their fault. I think it's because of maybe our disposition and where we were and how we were trained and stuff like that. So we've not pushed ourselves. We've not been daring enough to explore beyond our current contexts. And to a large extent, I think that defines a lot of African youth. And so we would say that the youth of Africa should be more daring and to venture beyond our current scopes. So let's say I was born in Accra and I've been living in Accra for all my life. I should dare to move out of Accra to, say, Lagos. I should dare to move out of Accra to, say, Harare. I should dare to move out of, so that kind of, because it's not that there are no opportunities. Having traveled, to a few African countries, I wouldn't say there are no opportunities in Africa. I would say that the opportunities, there's a mismatch of opportunities. So if somebody in South Africa, in Cape Town or Joburg or wherever, could find a well-paying job in Accra. But you see, the person is in Joburg or Cape Town, and the person is saying that there are no opportunities here, and we blacks and this and stuff. But if you just move out of here to a different location, you'll find that there are opportunities there. So that kind of, that we've locked ourselves into these spaces that we call our countries and our spaces, our cities and our villages. I think that's what is, to a large extent, limiting our scopes. So we should just open up and be more daring, travel. We should seek out the opportunities.
I think there is hope as well. I think not only because I'm choosing to be optimistic, but also at the end of the day, I think I can, I would suggest that all of us should choose to be optimistic. I think even in the face of adversity. But I think there's also reason to actually say that there is hope, because we can choose to see the progress that we have made already, that has been made by our forefathers and the people that have come before us, and the actions that they've taken and way it has led us to. And as much as there is lots of problems that we have to fight today, we also have to acknowledge that we have some things that our forefathers have fought, and we still have to keep on fighting the war.
Indeed, it's like where we find ourselves now as the African youth is a very strategic positioning, and I presented that in our first maiden convocation. So basically, we find that currently there are about 226 million youths in Africa, and more or less we are the largest. Africa has the largest demographic of youth, right? And so we are the youngest continent in the world, and also by far and large, I think the largest continent, if I'm not mistaken. So we have technology, we have the largest youth demographic. And by 2050, we are going to be 1.3 billion youth, just youth in Africa. That's the largest in terms of the human resource capital of the world is going to be clustered in Africa, right? And by 2050. And also we have willing and committed youth like yourself, myself, and all the people out there who are thinking about the African Renaissance and the Pan-African agenda and the unity of Africa. And so then we have quite strategically location and positioned to change the narrative from like moving forward. So all that's needed now is just the youth involvement and an awakening, right? So that, but because the truth is, if the youth we stand back, then there's not going to be any change. It's just going to be the same narrative.
Exactly.
But when we get involved with our numbers, with the technology that we have and our positioning, if all the several economic stratas, the youth in the high and middle class, youth in mid and low class, we all mix up and we are bringing our synergies. There's synergy. There's going to be something serious happening.
Yeah, I think in terms of change, it still speaks to the hope aspect that we're talking about.
Yeah,
I do think that all of us should be the change that we want to see in society, or at least try to move towards that change that we want to see. So I think it really starts at the individual level of what can I do in my personal capacity to influence the change that I want to see. I think, like we don't have any fancy resources here, you and I. We're just using our phone, my mobile phone and this microphone to record this, edit it on the software, put it out there, and maybe, bring more people to the space and stuff. So, and I think there are a lot more people who are more capable of, doing more change than we can possibly do. And I think we want to say, please do something about that. Take the action. And once you do that, you can start gravitating towards other people who share the same vision, the same goal. And that's how you end up, that's the grassroots aspect you're talking about. Then it builds this, structure that starts from the grassroots, like, oh, I want to do this, and this, anybody who wants to do the same thing, and there's this other person who wants to do the same thing, coming together now and building the vision together. So I think there is a case for optimism, and let us be the change that we want to see. I think it's easy. Oftentimes it's very easy to just point fingers and put blame elsewhere and say the government is failing us when we are ourselves inactive to some extent. But I think that leads me to the next question that I wanted to ask. What are the external factors that are limiting us from making progress? I'm talking about in terms of, just what has happened in the past, in the current political situation, our governments. I don't want to limit your answers there. I'm just giving a few examples. So what are those external factors that maybe after you've answered, what can we do, I think, about that?
To the first question, what are the limiting factors? I think some people may not agree with me, but then I think to a large extent, politicians, this is something I've held for some time. When Ghana gained independence in 1957, right, and we were the first. I mean, Egypt was, but Egypt was more or less not really colonized per se. So Ghana was the first, and when that set of youth pushed for independence, right, they put themselves on the line. They were fed up, right? And I guess that was even with the Arab Spring and the revolution in Egypt that sort of toppled the previous government and brought in it was about the youth not being content about the situation or the status quo. And so they sort of said, no, we really have to do something. Otherwise, there's not going to be a change. And that was what brought about independence for all our countries from colonialism and also from all this kind of dictatorship rules in some countries like Egypt and in Arab and stuff like that. And what happened was that when that generation, they were able to attain independence from the colonial masters, they sort of sort of just let things be instead of pushing on. I think the difference between, to a large extent, that generation that got us independence from colonialism and the following generations was that, and comparing it to, say, places in, say, let's say America, is that in America, to a large extent, they didn't stop there. They didn't stop at gaining independence or whatever, but then they kept pushing the frontiers. So the legislations and things kept changing, and America kept moving and moving and moving, and today America is like a superpower, you know. And I guess that was what really affected Africa. The fact that when the country started attaining independence, the youth sort of relaxed and they left it to the politicians. And the politicians became greedy and said that they wanted to attain, or they wanted to just cluster the power at that top level. And that's been the bane. That's been the challenge of Africa. Until now, our politicians and to a large extent, the youth and people have just left things to politicians. And this initiative and this whole activism that we are trying to do is to reclaim that power from politicians. Because, I mean, there are only few, to think of it. There are just a few people. So why should they actually be the people who are making decisions? We vote them in, all right. And the truth is, they are not in our interest. I mean, to a large extent, they are not in the interest of the youth. You look at it, there are just some families. If you look at it, I mean, even across the continent, power has been retained in some family circles and some tribal circles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be. And the fact that when independence was won on the back of youth action, the youth and that generation, I keep saying that generation because if they had kept the momentum on the politicians that took over, then there would have been, all things being equal, that kind of united front of that kind of united Africa that we wanted. Or better still, they could have pushed those politicians to give a better state than because those politicians in like 1-2, after a year or two now became dictators. And so you realize right after the independence, there were a lot of dictatorships all across and people became sort of dominant. The colonial masters were to a large extent dictators, right? But the youth were able to rise up against those. And so if we had maintained, that generation was able to maintain that momentum, that youth force, even against that kind of dictatorship, it would have changed the narrative. So that's it. And that's why this initiative and for our generation, we need to do this for the next generation. Otherwise, the situation is going to be worse than what it is now, because there are going to be more slums which is why, you know, the connection between research, policy, and practice, it's so real that we don't need to, this disjuncture is really affecting Africa, right? So, like I'm saying, we know that in the next 20 to 30 years, there's going to be, the global population is going to double. The number of slums are going to triple. So if we see the Kailicha, see all this Langa, see all the slums that are here just in South Africa, and all the slums are in everywhere, in Ghana, wherever they are there. And look at it, in the next 20 to 30 years, they are going to triple, right? And if the youth do not really take action, if we don't own this thing, if we don't make it a generational commitment, the next generation, it's going to be worse. Poverty is going to be so endemic. Like, things are going to be terrible, right? It's not going to be better. It's going to be worse. Which is why we, as this generation, we need to take it upon ourselves. We have the largest youth demographic. We have the resources. In fact, Africa is rich. Yeah, we have everything we need. All we need is the youth to be united and say that we need to bring about a change, and we can do it. The other thing is that the Western powers, and I think that's what affected our founding fathers when we attained independence. The Western powers, neocolonialism set off. So they were now forcing our presidents and our prime ministers who had just become presidents and stuff like that to do things in favor of the West. And because that kind of pressure was just too much, Nkrumah did not succumb to that kind of pressure. And I think Haile Selassie also did it. I mean, a couple of people, did not. And they were taken off. You realize there were coup d'etats and these coup d'etats arguably were, instigated by the West, right? And the thing is that the reason I keep saying that the youth of that generation they failed us to a large extent is because they did not mount up enough pressure to surpass that of the West, right? So we've been able to mount pressure to kick out the colonial master. Why can't we mount enough pressure to overcome that kind of neo-colonial agenda? And to a large extent, for all these years, for Ghana, it's been 60-something years, the neo-colonial agenda has been surpassing. The West is just pushing the agenda on us and all that. And all the structural adjustment projects, which led to even more poverty and exclusion, which now divided the gap between the rich and the poor and is still widening. So for us, the challenge is our politicians, or let me frame it well. The challenge is youth apathy, right? And leaving the power to politicians. So then the way forward is to reclaim the power from politicians. So youth must take our rightful place and push the politicians to give us what we want, because we have the money. They are misusing the money, they are misusing the resources, and it's just been a selfish interest. So when the youth become more conscious and we unite against any kind of political pressure or political power, and we are just saying that this is what we want and we want it now. That kind of force that brought that post-colonial independence, or brought independence from colonialism, is the same kind of pressure that will give us that independence from neo-colonialism and from political pressures. And that's what we need.
Huh, nice.
Yeah, that's what we need.
Yeah, I think I picked up two major things that as factors that limiting us from making the progress that we want to see. And you talked about the politics, the local politicians, and how the youth is also, how much involved it is into the politics. And you talked about superpowers, or the Western powers as well, and to what extent do they actually play a role in limiting the progress that we want to see. And I want to pick up on those two, and maybe someone listening might be pointing out other factors that we didn't mention here.
Indeed, yeah.
And I think most of the times problems are never something that you find one factor to that problem. Usually it's like a multivariate. You need to do a multivariate analysis, and you see that this factor contributes to the problem by this much extent. And I think it's very important sometimes when we want to address the problems that we have in society, identify the problem, identify the factors contributing to that problem, and also identify to what extent does each factor contribute, so that you can channel your effort and resources proportionally to depending on the problem, the factor, and how much it's contributing to the problem. So we have identified the external forces like Western powers and politicians, and I want to.
And also youth in action.
Youth in action. Yeah, okay. So, because we're trying to find solutions as well. And I think you mentioned to some extent that the youth needs to be engaged more to sort of claim back that power. And
that's it.
I would imagine that one of the ways to do so would be the involvement into the conversation and the action, to join the conversations and open up more spaces for conversation. Find people who share the same vision. Let the change that you want to see in society start with you, things that we've discussed already.
Yeah.
In terms of politicians now, because I'm still going to go to the, what can we do about external forces and stuff. Yeah. But I want to start on the politicians part, what is the youth supposed to do? Because, it's arguable also, because you've got those in power, they'll tell you that things are going well, right? Look at the progress that we're making. And if things are not going well, then the person to blame is, they look for blame elsewhere, right? It's not internal. It's like, the West, the youth is inactive. I think maybe in Nigeria there were sentiments like that of trying to blame other people and not the government. So given that there's already a resistance to the problem that you identify, when you say it's the politicians, and the politicians tell you, no, actually we're doing well. Look at what we've done, the policies we've made in the past 30 years, etc., etc. And given that now disagreement, and what's your advice to the youth? What's the youth supposed to do in terms of is it just going to say go and vote? Or when arguably in some places voting itself is, it's not really effective because some people say that the results are decided before the vote even begins.
Yeah.
So are you telling the youth to go and do action in the streets, or what are we saying here?
No, not necessarily. No, not now. Maybe that will be later, some years time, but not now. So what we are saying, we're not asking the youth to step into the streets and revolt and stuff like that. That's not what we are saying. We're saying that youth should be awakened, right? We have the power, and to a large extent, we felt that we didn't have any power, and that the power was outside of us, but the power is actually inside of us. So just be aware of what we have, the power we have, and use it. So as far as our politicians are concerned, it's to hold them responsible and accountable. And with the Voice One Africa initiative, what we're doing is the awakening bit. The awakening bit is really important because, what politicians do to make people vote to a large extent is they go to these places, they give handouts, they give money, they give rice, they give all sort of things like t-shirts and things, and they get the youth on the streets and the campaign grounds and stuff like that for people to vote. And this youth initiative, like we're saying, people have needs, right? Yeah. And sometimes because of this kind of want and this kind of need, people are vulnerable, right? So with just a little resource, money and stuff like they are able to control people. And that's the thing we want to break, right? And that can only be broken when people become conscious, right? It's just like somebody who is being molested, let's say a lady who is a victim of gender-based violence. Yeah. And maybe you are with your husband or your boyfriend. The person just keeps abusing you. Usually, at the psychological level, the people feel, those ladies or those abused feel that they don't have the power, right? But when that inner power is found, then they are able to stand against that resistance. And it's a whole new thing. You find out that this person who was always abused has now found their power, and they are able to speak up, and they are able to confront the situation. And you realize that the whole thing that was
the situation.
Yeah, that thing that was really beating you now is so little before you. And that's the same thing. The youth of Africa just needs to be awakened and to see that the power is not outside of us, it's within us. And so when we are able to find that strength within us,
and then channel it out,
then all these politicians and West and all, they don't have power over us again. Yeah. And so that's why we are working through the introspection. And Sigmund Freud really found that introspection is a powerful force, and it is. Because when you are able to sort of think deep within yourself and you find out who am I really, and you're able to dig it out, and because it's coming from deep within, nobody from outside can sort of destroy or distort that kind of identity. Yeah. So that's it. So we are using this kind of introspection as a force, as a tool, right, to figure out our identity, and also to carve out the African dream. And this African dream is not coming from the African Union. It's not coming from, we know the policy is there. We are not even looking at the policy. This African dream is coming from the Africans. It's coming from us. It's coming from the youth, right? This is what I want. And as I say it, then it becomes something that I've projected into the universe. And then it becomes a force that is out there. And it helps me to be able to realize it. Yeah. So that's how we're working through this.
Yeah, I think this is a pathway that you have drawn out here. And I think to anyone listening now, it's the message is, let's raise the youth, the consciousness of the youth, right? Yeah. Be aware of the situation, and be aware that the power really comes from within. Let's channel it from the inside of us and the way you do so is being the change that you want to see. Engage with other people and engage with us. If you want to get involved, write to Voice One Africa.
And just not to cut you, but then the other thing is also because this kind of initiative cannot be really financed by. We don't have the money, like you were saying.
Yeah.
We can't go into communities and try to give people money for them to get involved in this.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way is for people to really own it, right? When the youth see that this is for me.
Yeah.
And that's why, as part of our core principles, we also have social support as one of this is a grassroots organization. So we are working from the bottom up. We are representing bottom up perspectives at higher levels. So the findings and the provocations that come up at these levels, we channel it and we push it into policy discourses. And we are academics. I'm an academic. I'm in the policy space as an urban planner, and I'm actually going to push forward. I'm actually going to push until I get into some of these high spaces in international diplomacy. And some of these conversations are going to push into these spaces, right? So that's it. We pick out all these, and so we are representing these bottom-up perspectives at these high levels, so that everybody gets the opportunity to be heard.
Yeah.
And that's what we are doing. So for Voice One Africa, you can reach out. On all social media platforms, we are # Voice One Africa or at Voice One Africa, and our email is Voice One Africa. There's no so voiceonefrica@gmail.com.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we're kind of running out of time here, so we're going to wrap up the conversation. I think it's been fruitful. I think what you've talked about sort of addresses at least the two problems that you identified, because you're even talking about even the superpowers that we have. Want to fight those forces then. And I wanted to go a little bit deeper, but I think the time is not allowing us. I wanted to discuss on what's like on the global politics or the global collaboration, or how does Africa square itself on that platform, and how do we play smart enough so that it's mutual benefit. There's no it's not a parasitical kind of a relationship where our resources are being ripped off without us benefiting. But because and I think this is a discussion that some people might say, don't even collaborate with anyone, make it internal. And some people say, no, you can engage with the global economics and global politics, but do so strategically in such a way that you benefit us and those who are also engaging with us.
Yeah.
But
I think it's a good subject. So I think Africa should be careful of China. So what we find, we don't want to be slaves to China or neo-colonized by China, or in fact any other country for that matter. So this is China is using a whole new approach to venture into Africa, and they are using. You see, that's the thing. The fact that we are divided, it's something that's given not just China but all these other countries a foothold into our spaces, right? So they are having all this liberal trade agreements with different countries, and to a large extent because of kickbacks, political kickbacks. Some of our politicians are traitors, to a large extent. And the Ghanaian ex-president mentioned it. May so rest in peace, Jerry John Rawlings, who just passed. He mentioned it in one of his interviews with one of these agencies, that there are a lot of traitors in their political space, and they are selling Africa short. Our countries and our youth, they are selling us short in all these deals and trade agreements they are signing, right? So, and China is now one of the dominant players in this space, right? And so we need to be careful of China. And I was going to say that, yes, we need to be careful of China.
But we still need to engage with the global.
No, we need to engage with the global. But now we should actually be doing that on a collective front. Because if we're still going as like 54 different countries, we still do not have power. And that's what there is on the global platform. As 54 different countries, we don't have any voice. But if even for now, for the benefit of the doubt, we can't go as AU and make these kind of deals on the global platform. Then we should go as these regional chapters. We should go as West Africa, East Africa, Central Africa. We should go as that. But even though I think we should be able to go as the African Union pushing for some of these business deals or these global agreements. But the fact that we are going on individual country levels is a big disadvantage to us and our youth.
Yeah.
And we need to change. We need to change that bit. We need to change that bit.
It's been fruitful having you here.
Yeah, right, man. It's. I didn't think we were gonna have such a deep conversation.
Yeah,
but
so where can people find you? You mentioned your handles. Maybe one more time again.
Yeah.
In 20 seconds.
So I mean, personally, I'm Dejoe Quarcoo on all social media platforms. DEJOE, and then Quarcoo is QUARCOO on all social media platforms. But then with the Voice One Africa is voice as in like voice, and then one as in like.
Yeah, so let's proceed and just wrap up a bit. And you talked about where people can find you, and also like if anyone wants to be involved in this conversation and they want to engage with us, please, if you want to write to me, that's Brighton the host. Just write to me at info@conversationswithbrighton. Brighton, that's BRIGHTON. So it's info@conversationswithbrighton.com. That's the email address that you can write me on. But back to you, Joseph. I was asking, how does one get involved at an individual level? Someone who is listening right now, what do you say? What's your message to them? They maybe somehow they're inspired and they want to do something.
Yeah. So the first is to just share your African dream. You share your African dream. It could be a short video, a written one, but you just share it with the hashtag Voice One Africa. So you share your African dream with the hashtag Voice One Africa. Wherever you are in the world, we are going to see it. And
Africa
we just
with a C.
No, with a
K.
Yeah, with a C. Yeah. Okay. Voice One Africa. Yes. Voice One Africa. So Voice One and Africa with a C, the normal Africa.
And one is the numerical one.
Numerical one, yes. Yes. So that's it. So you share with that, and we'll note it and get in touch. You could always also connect on social media. We are active. So you send a message, we'll connect with you, and yeah. But if maybe for any reason you want to contact us via WhatsApp, that would be +27 655 406699. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thank you, Brighton.